Hi everyone, I'm Pari. Welcome to Living Your Best Life with Eddie Stone, founder and CEO of Touchstone Essentials. Hello, Eddie.
Hello, Perry. How are you this evening, or this morning, I should say?
Yeah, great. I'm happy to have you here too. So how's
Yeah.
everything there?
You know what? It's fantastic. We've got a little bit of our fall weather, so it was actually a little bit cool today, which was very pleasant. It's been way too hot. I know it's always hot in Thailand, but we're accustomed to the seasons here, and so it's fantastic. And my daughter actually pointed out to me, Perry, that it's less than 90 days till the end of the year, end of the calendar year.
Yeah.
And so it's, kind of a chance this week for me to sort of think about the first part of the year and did I reach my goals and my expectations and what are the things I might need to do that I haven't done yet? And then what can I do to sort of prepare for next year? And then next year, 2020, is the start of a new decade.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, most of the time when I think of things, I think of like, where do I want to be 1 year from now? Or if I'm thinking a little further out, where do I want to be 3 years from now? But I started thinking about, okay, where do I want to be at the end of the next decade, 2030?
Yeah, cool.
I'll be 66 years old, right? So where do I want to be at 66? So that's what's been on my mind.
Still young.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah, I believe that time flies, soon to be Christmas again.
It does fly.
Uh-huh.
My family loves the holidays. They just love to get together and enjoy the holidays with one another. So I do look forward to this time of the year a great deal.
Okay. Okay, the time flies, but people still facing health problems. So today you have any issue to talk about?
I do, and it's funny you said that because I'm not sure that the pressure of the holidays might make it worse for some people, and not everybody has a family situation that's comfortable, and so they might find themselves lonely or other things of that kind. So, one thing I think we all should be conscious of are people in our world, our friends and family that perhaps have loneliness or other things that are sort of mental concerns or emotional concerns. One of the things for us to be alert to, particularly in the older part of our population, which has sort of kind of led me to our subject tonight. So I was kind of looking back over some of our history together, right, and some of the shows that we've done. And I don't think we've spent a whole lot of time talking about longevity. How do people live to be really old, right? And in America, if you get into your 80s, particularly if you've still got a sound mind and a pretty good body, that's a pretty good number. Although people are living longer today, there's no question about that. Really, all around the world, you've got more and more people that live to be 100. But there are certain parts of the world where the people can live to be 100, 110, right? Which is almost, I can't even hardly imagine, right, 110. I saw a gentleman that lived on the island of Osaka, Japan, being interviewed not long ago. And there was a translator, right? So, he was speaking Japanese, but the translator was talking. And this gentleman still gardens. He still goes to the market by himself. He doesn't drive, but he sort of indicated that he really never drove. He was really a farmer, but he still goes and plays some kind of card game with his friends. And I don't know, it was really interesting because he seemed to have a very vibrant life. And most of the time when you see people well over 100, that might not be true. And so that sort of inspired me to talk about our subject tonight. So I want to talk about blue zones.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, are you familiar with the term blue zone, Perry? Is
that
yes. Okay, so blue zones, for those in our audience that don't know a lot about it, blue zones are often associated with islands in places like Greece, I should say, Japan, Italy, where you've got populations that have sort of some isolation from the really strongly industrialized parts of their countries. And then they're also identified in Costa Rica. Costa Rica has a very specific blue zone. And then a place in California, which is certainly not an island and very industrialized, but a place called Loma Linda, California. And these blue zone populations in general would live anywhere from 12 to 15 years longer than their counterparts, say people of the same age, but perhaps in a different region, but somewhat similar, right? So on these Greek islands, these island of Osaka in Japan, Italy, these individuals are really outliving everybody else, sort of in those countries. And that's also true for the people in Loma Linda. And so there's been a lot of research on what's causing this to happen. And there's no question that you can say that they live a more simple life. And they also have a lot more movement in their life. They tend to not drive cars as frequently. Certainly people in a city, right, that are on buses and other things, we don't have the same physical movement. They tend to be very active, just like the gentleman that I was talking about that was a gardener. So they have less stress. They have more exercise. They tend to spend more time outside. They also have a lot of family. They seem to have, and when I say family, I really mean like community, right? So they're physically around other people. They have a strong social network, social fabric they identify with, and they spend time with. But some of the other things that are really specific and for us can be, we can certainly learn about being more active and keeping a tight social fabric and things like that. But other things that are important to identify is they eat more plant-based foods than animal-based foods or animal proteins that you would associate with other populations. And so those plant-based foods, there's generally, they're more nutrient dense and rich. Of course, we know those micronutrients found in fruits and vegetables. That's kind of what's the vitality of your cells, what your cells thrive on. But perhaps the biggest single factor to identify it's that they eat a more diverse portfolio of fruits and vegetables. In the States, I think the average person eats anywhere from 3 to 5 different types of fruits and vegetables, and certainly not all in one day, which is a really narrow range of foods that we eat here. In places like that, it wouldn't be uncommon that someone might eat from a variety of 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 different fruits and vegetables on a regular basis. And so it's not just that it's plant-based and it's nutrient-rich foods, it's the diversity of those foods. And that's really where a lot of research is coming into play. And the benefits are numerous. Number one, you associate those kinds of foods, particularly in a place like Greece, you associate healthy fats, that they're getting from the olive oil, that's sort of this constant part of their diet. The folks in Italy and Greece as well, they've got antioxidant-rich wines locally made that are sort of this endemic part of their diet on a regular basis. And you think of fruits and vegetables when you think of the Mediterranean diet. So those are things that I think probably all of us on this, listen to this, it's kind of advice that we've heard, but it's that diversity to really consider. And so as I've done research, and one of the places I love to do my research is a place called nutritionfacts.org. Mm-hmm. And so for anybody listening that wants a good website without commercial interest to really learn about the nuts and bolts of nutrition, I'm not going to promise it's all exciting information, but they do a good job on short videos that are very informative. If you're curious about your health, and you can search by sort of symptoms or concerns and things of that kind. So nutritionfacts.org, it's a great website. But they've got information there that they published where, and this is specific, and I want to make sure everybody realizes, we're just using this as an example. We're not trying to say by any means that we're talking about a cure or a treatment or mitigation of disease, and certainly not cancer. But one of the things they did looking at blue zones and diversity of diets is they studied the impacts of these fruits and vegetables on men with prostate cancer. In some cases, isolating live prostate cancer cells in a test tube environment. Other cases, they were actually studying men in their 60s that had prostate cancer. And they got very specific in some of the research. And have you ever had pomegranate, Pari? Is that a native fruit in Thailand? Yeah. So I don't know about you, but I love pomegranates. They're sort of messy, right? They get all over your hands. Yeah. And it's interesting. For a long time, my family, we didn't quite know how to get the juicy seeds out of the pomegranate, right? But my daughter learned how to do it. And so they're just terrific from a flavor standpoint, as far as I'm concerned. Pomegranates are known for being very robust in their antioxidants. And you've probably heard that, right? It's a well-known, it's almost like the same type of reputation, say, that blueberries have in terms of how they can really impact, or even grapes. And there's a type of ellagic acid, which is just a component. It's not an acid that you would think of that's bad for you or anything like that, that they really identified that's an important part of the pomegranate. And so they said, what happens if we isolate that ellagic acid and give it to people that have prostate concerns, or even put it on live prostate cells in a test tube environment? What would happen? And while it had a modest impact, what they discovered is, by itself, separated from the other parts of the pomegranate, it had really very negligible impact. So what they learned in trying several chemicals or several compounds out of the pomegranate was that individually or isolated, they just weren't that effective. They weren't really more effective than, say, a placebo, right? And so that's where, somebody's getting a sugar pill, so to speak, is in a placebo environment. So they went back and said, well, what if instead of using the isolation, what if we use the whole pomegranate? Let's use the full extract. What would happen? Much more promising. The results were much better. And so then they took it a step further, and they took men that had prostate cancer. They put them in a study. It was randomized. So some of the men were getting a placebo, a sugar pill, and some were actually getting this mixture. And in this particular case, the mixture was a mix of pomegranate, broccoli, turmeric, and green tea. And because those powders, you've got to put them inside a pill, right? You can't have one group taking a really big pill or eating a bowl of something and the other group not doing it. They were limited on the amount that they could supply. And so in this research, it's kind of hard to imagine, right? But literally they were using, each person was taking on a daily basis, 6 pomegranate seeds made into a powder, 1 broccoli floret, an 1/8 of a teaspoon of turmeric, if I remember correctly, and about a 1/6 of a bag of green tea bag of green tea. Now you can imagine, right? That's not a whole lot, but what they found during the research was that the population base that was getting the actual pill made of those ingredients versus the sugar pill, all the men with sugar pills that had prostate issues, their prostate cancer got worse during the course of the research. The men that weren't taking the placebo, were actually taking the mix, their prostate cancer stayed static. It didn't advance, which is a really sort of incredible dynamic. And so what we can learn from that, which confirms what we've learned with blue zones and other research of this kind, is that food diversity is the real hero here, and the real instruction for you and me and all of us, everyone that's listening to what we're talking about here. That's really the thing for everybody to take away from this, and to really sort of consider the highest quality of fruits and vegetables that you can get, right? And as much variety as you have access to, trying new things as frequently as possible, not cooking them to death. And so there's a lot of advice out there, but fundamentally the body needs balance. It doesn't need a narrow diet. It needs more plant than it needs animal. And it needs healthy fats more than it needs unhealthy fats. And that's really the characteristics of blue zones that can be instructive for us. Now, you and I maybe you can move to Osaka, Japan, but I can't, right? I got my life and my family's here. I can't move off the coast of Greece, although I'd probably like to, right? I see pictures of those Greek islands, and they're just gorgeous, right? And Costa Rica is just gorgeous. But we've got to take these things instructive for where we live. And so food diversity is one of the more effective ways for anybody listening to us to reduce their risk of all types of degenerative diseases, quite possibly extend the length of their life, have more life in the years that they have, and model, or at least as best they can, learn from those people in those blue zones. Because when you do these things, you're going to deal with less inflammation, less oxidative stress, which accelerates not just disease, but the aging process. a more healthy gut biome. Gut and bowel disease are just endemic in a modern diet. Cognitive function is better for people in these environments. They have their wits about them longer. You can actually look at research that shows people that eat a heavy ultra-processed food diet, their cognitive function declines sooner than those that don't. They have less incidences of food allergies. And I don't know if food allergies are a big thing in Thailand, but certainly, boy, in the developed part of the world, America, other places, food allergies just sort of everywhere, right? Comes from this narrow modern diet. And the nutrients and all of those things working together synergistically. Just think about it. 10 pomegranate seeds, 1 broccoli floret, which is not much, 1/8 of a teaspoon of turmeric, not even a concentrate, 1/8 of a bag of green tea, and it was able to hold cancer back in this very specific research. I just think that's exciting. And I thought that might make a nice basis for our discussion this evening.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting, Eddie. Seems many people cannot move to live in the like blue zones. We should, create our own blue zones, maybe, right? Like eat good food.
We can do that, right? Because almost everybody, if they extend themselves, can find, if not broccoli, mustard greens, collard greens, kale. You can find something that's green and leafy and deep in color, right? Most everybody can do that. They can find richly colored fruits, that would complement that part coming together. Things like turmeric, green tea, commonly available. It's just a question of saying to ourselves, this is important to me. I'm going to make it a part of my food budget. I'm going to go find these things. You might take a little hunting. You might have to buy it on Amazon. I don't know where you'll have to go, but most of these things would be commonly available really in any place that's not sort of a food desert. And there are places in our country where it is difficult to find fruits and vegetables, but most of the population, 99% of the population, isn't facing a problem like that. And so we can do it, Pari. We can make our own blue zones.
I do have a question, because some kind of fruits and vegetables are good for people in like cold country. Okay, and how about people in hot country? We can eat the same food, same fruits and vegetables to have the same result of healing or curing?
I think so, from what I've read. So what I've learned is it's important to pay attention to what are locally grown and have been grown for a long time fruits and vegetables. What's native to your area? Because you have to sort of trust the elders of your community, parents and grandparents that learned lessons from their parents and grandparents that were raising certain types of fruits and vegetables or even livestock for their area. And they're that locally grown fruits and vegetables. Those things are very important. The biodiversity of a local community is important and instructive. And so I think it's critical to think of things like that. Where I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, the eastern part of our state is just, our whole state's very lucky with agriculture, but the eastern part of our state is a very rich soil. There's all kinds of peas and beans and things you just don't find in other parts of the country, right? And so, we try to take advantage of it. I had something called field peas last night that my wife made that were just fantastic. I don't see them other places. But if I go other places like Nebraska or others, there's going to be fruits and vegetables there that I don't see locally here. So I think you have to trust what's grown in your community because of the length of time that's been happening is important for the local population's health.
Yeah, correct. Because now, when we search for information, like here in Thailand, we search and then we find information from your country, from our Western way of dealing, right? So we like follow that step, but some might not suitable for us, I think in some way.
Yeah, I tend to think on a local level.
Okay.
I would search and research people locally, local restaurants, and what are they cooking and where are they sourcing those fruits and vegetables, and look for that native to your area information, because I think that's the most instructive. It it doesn't always fit what's going on in New York or Los Angeles or North Carolina, right? What's happening in your area is important to pay attention to.
And I mean, not the recipe, but what you mentioned about pomegranate seed, broccoli, turmeric, and green tea, I think is interesting, very interesting. You know, like in every country can find this, I think.
That's right. And it probably wasn't, you know, the pomegranate's important, but it probably could have been blueberries. Right? It might not have had to have been turmeric. It could have been ashwagandha.
So what if they all eat fresh, but we have to eat big quantity to eat fresh because we don't have like in powder?
No, you don't, because these folks were probably consuming 60 to 100 milligrams. That's really very small. If you take what I described and you dry it, it's very small. For example, if you're familiar with some of our supplements, most of them are 1 gram to 2 grams in terms of content per serving. Well, that's 2,000 milligrams instead of 100. So it doesn't take as much as people think to have a very positive impact, because you forget these ingredients. They may be in small quantities, but they work together synergistically. So you might think of it this way: instead of 1 + 1 being 2, 1 + 1 here would be greater than that number because of the synergy of the ingredients working together.
And talking about food allergies now, Thai people have more food allergies too, more record.
I really suspect it's the processed food creeping into the diet, particularly the high gluten starches. Are, you know, I just don't think we're doing ourselves any favor with all that processed food.
Okay, thank you very much, Eddie, for your information today. Very useful. So we can try to take that what you would recommend us to do.
Thank you, Pari. Next time, I look forward to it.
Okay, see you next time. Bye-bye, Eddie.
Thank you.
Bye.